God, they're strong.
Getting the boat outside, right to the boat.
Well, welcome guys. Episode 6 ABT Lockdown Live. And you know what? I thought the light at the tunnel would be a whole lot further down the road than it is right now. We just had that government announcement this afternoon in Queensland here. We've got our list of times and places that things will open as long as we don't have any more major outbreaks. So I've had a few calls this afternoon from some of the guys, you know, what's happening with the calendar. We're still playing it by ear. We need to work out what and when we can do it. Basically, when state borders are open again, we can travel those long distances. We're going to be happy to go fishing with you guys again on the water in ABT events, and that's for both BREAM and Bass tournaments, and indeed Barra come the end of the year. We have BREAM, Bass and Barra on the show tonight. We've got a variety of people. We've got Rod Walmsley coming to talk a little bit about Barra and some of the interesting things he's seen on these Humminbird units. We've got Shaun Clancy from Humminbird to talk a little bit of BREAM and a bit about their Mega 360. We have got the AFC guest that you have all been waiting for, which is Chris Wright. What an absolute gun of a fisherman, and holds all of the records that are worth having in ABT. Biggest BREAM, biggest limit, won the first ever AFC, had the perfect day in the first ever season of AFC. You know, absolute legend. He joins us tonight, and well done, Slick, for getting that technology together. A lot of these guys are going to be chatting tonight in the chat bar there, so if you're not getting involved, get involved. There's going to be some real expertise sitting in that sidebar tonight and answering all of your questions that you have. We've got Steve Fields, who is the inventor and the godfather of the Hobie Worlds. We had the Hobie Worlds 8 on the Gold Coast last year, which was a ridiculously good event. Just quietly, it's better than most things we run at ABT. But it was great to be involved with them, to be involved in the live streaming, and everyone from all over the world absolutely loved it. Now, Steve's over in America now, but we've got some footage from when we caught up with him at St George's Basin at the Hobie Australian Championships, when all we were talking about was bushfires. Remember that time? Bushfires? In the past now, isn't it? Well done, anglers, for doing the right thing. I saw some science this week from Bill Sornock from InfoFish, which has got to do with tag returns, but it's a proxy for how anglers have been behaving. He has not had a tag return from someone fishing more than 50 kilometres from home in Queensland for weeks and weeks, and that's exactly what we're supposed to be doing. So it's good to have some science to show us that you guys are doing the right thing, and the more that we all do the right thing on the water, the quicker we're going to be able to get back to doing exactly what we want. So a big shout out to you guys, and thank you very much. Of course, we have competitions. We're giving away a great Costa merchandise pack and some AFC DVDs and a jersey, an ABT jersey, for telling us where you are. Do it in the chat bar there. Let us know what part of Australia or the world you're watching from. Just quietly though, Mike Sutcliffe, I'm not posting this shit to Singapore, so it's going to be an Australian we give it to. Put it in the side there, and we are going to draw. Well, Nicole, who's at the other end of this broadcast making it all happen, she will draw out that prize tonight. So hey, doesn't hurt to suck up a bit when you're saying where you're from, and make sure you spell the name right. Nicholle. I'm going to say that once. Enter on the side there. We've got some other competitions tonight. One's from Rapala. I've got the box over there. It's everything left in the Rapala prize box competition. We've got Sea Monkey Enterprises donated us some blades, some jigs, and some medals to give away. Potential ABT sponsor there, and we've got some great gear from Wilson's via their Xeric baits to give away later tonight when we're talking Barra. So plenty of comps, plenty of interviews. This show will probably go for a couple of hours, but I know that you ain't got anything else to do on a Friday night, so enjoy it with us. Spend it on ABT Lockdown Live. Interact with us, and we're going to hope you enjoy this first story. We're going to have a word from our sponsor, Daiwa, first, and we're going to come back with Shaun Clancy from Humminbird. So anybody who's spent any amount of time around ABT BREAM would know this fella I've got with me now. It's Shaun Clancy from BLA, and he would be best known not for the 20,000 products in their catalogue, but mainly for Humminbird and Minn Kota products, because, Shaun, you've been bleeding those products for near 20 years now, haven't you?
Yeah, it's been a long time. I'm 20 years with BLA last year. So it's been a long time, and I was in the retail game before that. So it's certainly been a long journey, probably since I was 15 years old, promoting and pushing Humminbird. And then later on down the track, when BLA secured this distribution for Minn Kota, doing that alongside your brother, Tim Morgan.
Yeah, and look, we've been releasing a lot of historical ABT footage recently. We've found it on all the old DVDs and stuff that I found while we were in lockdown here. And what I really remember now by looking at that stuff is what a great supporter Humminbird was in the early days for ABT. In fact, the very first Bass Pro Series was the Humminbird Bass Pro Series. The first few years of the BREAM Tour was the Humminbird BREAM Series. So in the early days, you know, Humminbird really put the resources in to make sure that ABT was a success, mate. So it's been, thank you firstly to your company for helping us in the early days. And look, over the years, it's been a bit of a rocky ride. You've had the highs of being in AFC and winning AFC trophies to the lows of not having seen you for years. But the good news is that BLA is back. We've got the Humminbird Bass Electric Australian Open, which looks like it might be able to get cracking in this September. And you've got some pretty awesome product to back it up with. It's that Mega 360 that you launched recently. I want to talk a little bit about firstly, let's get this out of the road, your AFC career, because you qualified for AFC by winning the 2010 BREAM Grand Final, and you just got sucker punched right out of it straight away. Tell us how that happened.
Yeah, it was an interesting phone call I made to you. I was in the driveway of my place, and I gave you a call, and I've been sort of tracking how the other guys were going, and you'd changed the rules a little bit that year where everyone was together. So the Bass and the BREAM guys are all together, and it's kind of one team. So it's not relegation for the BREAM guys or relegation for the Bass guys. You all had to succeed as a team. And you also threw another one that where all teams except the winning team was out. So you sort of changed so that you obviously could flow through a few more teams. And I rang you and said, am I right in saying we're out and I haven't even flown up to the Tweed to compete? And you went, yeah, it looks like it. So it was hard to find the motivation, but me and Tristan Taylor had a good time, and we actually won the BREAM side of things, which was good. And but yeah, it was 1 year, and couldn't control it, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's right, mate. The candle burnt bright, but not for very long. So the pink jersey AFC series it was. You were Team Tackle Junkie then, mate. I'm sure you've got a pink jersey not framed anywhere because it was the most hideous coloured jersey I think we've ever made. But we made you wear that with pride.
Yeah, it was good. Absolutely loved it. You know, back then you had to win the grand final to get in. So it was actually a really big deal. And, you know, obviously to win a grand final was a big deal and huge, and obviously still is. And then that extra reward by getting into AFC and sort of following the path of, you know, the Scotty Towners and the Chris Wrights and Tim Morgans and Reuters and all those guys that we used to watch and be envious of back in those early years.
Yeah, mate. So thank you very much for taking that so well. You were a pretty good sport about it. After you spat chips for about 30 seconds, you're right. I thought that's like, okay, just had to get it off my chest. The product that you've got nowadays that's really opening some eyes is the Mega 360 imaging. Now, Humminbird's had 360 for a while. Like, well, I remember having one when it first started. It was a reasonably clumsy sort of unit that looked like a talon on the back of your boat. And it had the unit that would go down and that little transducer and spin underneath. And it'd give you a reasonably good image of what's going on. But when you've applied that mega high frequency technology to it, it's like the old stuff's junk. This new stuff is awesome. And tell us about the feedback you've had for the product, because you've got a few guys who've got it on boats now.
Yeah, so the guys that really knew the previous 360, which was running 455 kilohertz, so a lot's come in the space of side imaging and down imaging, where we've evolved up into 800 kilohertz and then up into megahertz, which is around 1200 kilohertz. And frequency gives you better clarity. And then it's a trick of getting that high frequency to actually make sense. So there's a lot of background work that the guys at Humminbird do to create the images that we create. So unfortunately, even though the 455 kilohertz 360 was really good, and the guys that knew how to use it, knew what to look for, found it a deadly weapon. And you see that from the Palaniks and the Jochimsons over in the States, continue to use that 455 to success. And certainly Barra guys and things like that over here would use it to success, but maybe the brim guys and guys chasing smaller fish found it a little more difficult to get that definite fish return, but you could still use it for structure and bottom composition and stuff like that. So coming through and bring it into megahertz range just cleans up all that image, so that we see very similar quality of image than what we're seeing with our mega side imaging, but obviously rotating right around the boat. We've got Barra guys using it. We've also got, and they're getting unbelievable returns, as we could appreciate. Chris Hickson's got one, so he's been using it on the brim, and he's posted some really nice shots showing individual brim clusters and schools and things coming through. He's been using a bit on the Murray Cod too, down at Lake Mulwala, the Cod Nationals, and got some amazing results there too. So yeah, it's definitely got a nice reputation in its early time over here in Australia.
Yeah, we all remember when Chris Hickson turned up to the Gippsland round of the Costa Brim Series. He came straight from the Hobie Kayak Australian Championships that he won. He strapped this thing onto his boat the night before. He came in, I think, in second place in that event, saying, "Oh, I was just going across a flat and the 360 was saying the brim were over there. He was throwing and catching them." I go, that's the last thing that prick needs, is to know exactly where the fish are on a flat. It's like he's deadly everywhere else, and it's just made him more invincible. But luckily, he died in a ditch over that pattern. The fish left, and even though the 360 can show you where the brim are, it can't show you. It can't tell you where they moved to. So luckily,
that's right.
Luckily, but you know the images he was getting from there, and we're going to have some on the cutaway here. Just of the flat, of the brim, that round donut-looking image. Once you know how to interpret it, it's just ridiculous the amount of clarity, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the greatest benefit is that rotating 360 image. It'll show you obviously snags, rocks, weed beds, and all those sorts of structure-based things. It's also going to show you fish and where the fish are exactly. So rather than, I suppose previously, we get out on a sand flat and we start randomly casting around the boat. And realistically, we're probably casting maybe 5 to 10% productively in the direction of a fish. With 360, you can turn that into full productivity. If the fish are in the area that you've set your 360, you'll be able to see them and you'll be able to cast exactly to them. So we sort of look at it as a clock face, so you can really say, okay, there's fish at 3 o'clock and they're 20 meters away, and cast straight to them. So I suppose your casting efficiency and productivity goes through the roof.
Yeah, and we have seen that. We've seen Carl using his 360 when he won the event at Lake 10 Killer last year. He wasn't using the Mega 360 though. He was using the old 455, wasn't he? So Now, that new, clearer, updated image is going to help anyone that fishes tournament, be it bream, bass, and barra. Now, the event that you guys are sponsoring this year, the Humminbird Bass Australian Open at Lake Wyalong, it's going to be perfect for this product. And you haven't been to the lake, but there's the fishery consists of a lot of open water standing timber. Like you'll have big paddocks of nothing, and then there'll just be 4 or 5 or a cluster of trees in there. And you go up to the trees and guys throw plastics or spinnerbaits or weedless, slipless crankbaits through this structure. You're going to be able to rock up to that sort of structure, just zap it with the 360 and know if there's even fish in there. It's nearly unfair, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think probably if guys use it even better than maybe going to timber they can see that's breaking the surface would be to find areas of timber that are underwater and can't be seen from the surface. And what that'll do is give anglers maybe some ground and some structure that doesn't get hit as hard. So being able to do that, and even if there's a few isolated trees that are underwater, you'll be able to know exactly where that tree is. So as you approach, basically you can see, okay, there's a tree that's 20 meters away at 11 o'clock, and you can start casting in that tree without having to get anywhere near it. You'll also be able to see fish holding on that tree and on the branches as well. So that's probably where I would use it, is to try and find some structure that's under the water that people can't see that breaking the surface.
Yeah, no, and look, it's funny how things go the full cycle, because I remember an old bass megabucks at Lake Glenbourne, Timmy and Carl. It was just after the side imaging stuff came out. They were driving around the main basin, finding all of those secret trees, and then using Spotlock, because Spotlock had just come out to spotlock in the wind above these secret trees. And everyone's going, what the hell are they doing? They're fishing very specific structure, which is 20 foot down on a windy day that no one else can see. And it dead set gives you a solid advantage. And like usual, Carl probably walked away with $4,000 or $5,000 in his pocket after that event, thanks to his Humminbird gear. And we've been used to seeing that all over the years. Mate, the last thing I want to talk about is when we did the product launch for the 360, it was over at Tangalooma. It was just before all of the COVID stuff kicked in. But one of the useful things that I like doing is I like testing out manufacturers' claims. So you're telling me, okay, it's going to give you this great view of the bottom. Of course, what I do is I don't just believe you. We put on the snorkel and goggles, got underneath, we put the drones up, and in that really clear water at the wrecks, and there are some cutaways of this happening now, you can see what everything looked like underwater from the air, and then you could compare that with the mega imaging. And even though the 360, it's a little bit distorted, it's not 100% undistorted, it's pretty friggin' accurate what we do. But the interesting thing is when you go under the water, you can see that 360 picks up the structure that you can't actually see from above. So there were a few ribs of an old boat sitting there. And from the drone, you could hardly see them. From the boat, you could hardly see them. But once you get underwater, it was actually quite significant structure that unit picked up. So what I learned from that day is, the 360 in combination with your eyes and what you can see, it's absolutely a deadly combination.
Yeah, and I think that was a good example where we could cross-reference and jump in the water, put the drone up, because we did have that clear water. But being sonar doesn't rely on any water clarity. So it's going to be, obviously, somewhere like that, you probably don't need the technology because you can see everything anyway. But in a system where it's darker water, dirtier water, it's going to show you the same amount of clarity that it did on that day, because it's sonar and it's not using any sort of light to emit that return.
Yeah, no, it's good. Look, in dirty waters like the Brisbane River or the Fitzroy River or some of the cod rivers, it's going to be absolutely magic technology. You know what I'm like, though? I just need to test it so that I've done that grounding myself, so that I'm believing 100% what's on the screen. So, mate, really looking forward to the Bass Electric Australian Open. I'm pretty sure that I'm going to get a loan unit to try for that as well. So we're going to be running those units in the event, and I'll try to bring you some live coverage of it all happening, mate. And hopefully, if you Victorians are being good boys that are allowed out of your state, you'll be able to come up to that event too and experience the wonderful bass fishing, which is Lake Wyalong, mate. Again, thanks for the input. Thanks for BLA being a great sponsor of ABT, and thanks for joining us on ABT Lockdown Live.
Thanks, Steve. It's a pleasure, and I've obviously been part of the ABT scene for a long time, and it's great to be supporting you guys. And I hope to get up and be part of that Bass Electric and chase some bass, which I very rarely do.
Awesome, mate. We'll catch you then.
Thanks, Steve.
Hi, I lost a big fish earlier today. Wasn't using Sufix. It was about this big.
Look, slow down there, cowboy, okay? A fish in the lost van, huh? You want your fish. Sorry, honey, that fish is gone.
Always use the best line, Sufix 832.
Well, there you go. Thanks, Shaun, for joining us there, and plenty more segments coming up tonight. Just a quick reminder, though, we've got a couple of competitions running tonight. Well, we've got shitloads of competitions, actually. For some Costa gear, pile of AFC DVDs, let us know where you're from on the chat bar in there. You need to be logged into YouTube and let us know where you're from, and Nicole will be picking a winner on that later tonight. The next segment we got coming up is with Chris Wright, and a reminder that at the end of each of the Lockdown Live episodes, we have the relevant AFC episodes going on afterwards. So at the end of tonight's show, we're making live all of the Season 1 and the Season 2 episodes that Chris Wright talks about in this one here. So your weekend viewing is absolutely sorted. Series 1 and 2 with Chris Wright in them, they are good viewing episodes. It's old school brimming, heavy line, heavy leader, and don't give those bastards any drag at all. Remember that, also, we have Chris Wright's Perfect Day. If you've never have seen AFC Series 1, he catches about 30 fish in a row off one bridge in Melbourne, and we've got each of those captures on camera for you. So let's have a... Actually, let's not have an ad. Let's go straight into the absolute gentleman and AFC and ABT legend, Chris Wright. All right, guys, you have asked for it, and we have delivered here on ABT Lockdown Live. We have got the holder of multiple ABT records and AFC champion, Chris Slick Wright. Righty, welcome to ABT Lockdown Live, mate. And we know you're sequestered down there on the far south coast of New South Wales, surrounded by charcoal after the bushfires, but you have made the technology work, mate. Well done.
Thanks, Steve. I won't say it was easy, but we've got the job and it's working, so let's roll.
That's good, mate. Now, the first question I've got, and I haven't prompted you for this one. I haven't told you I'm going to ask it. But the nickname Slick, mate, I've got a fair idea on how that happened. Take us through how Slick happened. And if you don't tell the story, I'm going to.
Yeah, well, that was on the Shellhaven River. The second year, I think it was, the second tournament I ever did. We first up, it started with a game of pool with your brother. And I forgot who the other partner was, but we beat them pants down.
Yep.
So the boys had to do the run around the table, and I won't tell you what happened because one of them fell over and another one ended on top of them. And then we went into the comp, and we had the comp, and luckily I come away with a win in that one, which was good. And at the very end of the day, Kim Bain raced over and wound my boat up on the trailer for me, and that was just too much for all the guys to handle. And Slick come along. I wasn't excited about it, to tell you the truth, but after talking to Bushy and told me how nicknames could be a lot worse, I just copped it, and it's stuck ever since.
I think it was Trent Butler, wasn't it? He was going, "How slick are you, mate? Kim Bain won't even wind her own boat on the trailer."
That's exactly right. And she did wind the boat on. I wasn't in it. I was standing nearby, but she did it, and I was very grateful for it.
There you go, mate. So that is how Slick turned. And it just happened to be that, let's clarify this one. Is a Slick rig, is that named after you?
I had nothing to do with it whatsoever.
Did they steal the nickname?
No. It's still the nickname. Yeah, maybe they picked up on that afterwards. I'm not sure with Shimano. And I think that was all Terry Dunphy's creation, the old Slick rigs.
The old Slickies, mate. They've caught thousands and thousands of barra and dewies and everything all over the joint. They're a great lure. Now, let's talk about some of your... well, firstly, before we talk about your records, and you've got plenty, tell us about how you're dealing with the lockdown at COVID. You're an abalone diver. That's your day job, but you don't do that all year. And you've had a bit of disruption this year. Tell us where you've landed after COVID. What's happened?
This year's been pretty horrible, actually. It's in work-wise. We started with the bushfires in Malakuta.
Yeah.
And they tore through the town and burnt the factory down that we process all the abalone. A lot of locals lost their houses and their jobs. And still to this day, the temporary facility's not finished, and so we haven't gone to work mainly because of the bushfires. But now that the temporary facility, is ready to go, COVID's come along, and obviously no one's eating outdoors in China, and so really we've got no orders at this stage. So things aren't that flash, but on the other hand, I've had a great time with my children for the last month or two, and we're having a ball together, and I'm making the most of that before everything does start up again.
So let's go. We had a bit of a chat yesterday about what your specialties are. It's not maths and English, is it?
No, I'm definitely not a teacher. Hats off to being a school teacher. There's been a lot of physical education with my teaching, boogie boarding, surfing, diving, spearfishing, you name it, we've done it, and we're having a ball doing it.
Well, that's good, mate. They're getting a good rounded life experience down on the south coast of New South Wales. Now, let's talk about...
We're very lucky where we're positioned down here for it, and I've got national parks straight behind me, so we don't have to travel anywhere to do all this, so it's been good.
That's awesome, mate. Yeah, I think I said the other day, the best part of your house and your lifestyle is everything, and the worst part is bushfires. That's the only thing that can throw a spanner in your works, isn't it? And you had some good ones.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Now, I want to talk about the records, and we were talking about it. We were in Tassie this year. We go to Tassie every 2 years now with ABT, and when we were down there this year, they were all talking about the old records, and of course, the one that everyone wants but no one can get is your 5 bream limit for 7.055 kilos in the Derwent. Take us through that day, because it happened about 12 years ago, I think now, and no one's really come close to it ever since. So take us through that day, mate.
Yeah, that day was sort of just like any other day in a comp. You meet your non-boater and you look forward to a day's fishing, and because it's Tasmania, you're even more looking forward to a day's fishing because you know what might be possible. And I fished along Bedlam Walls with 1 kilo and 100 mil bloodworm wriggler on a 2 gram number 4 head. And we just drifted along the wall and we're getting the odd fish. And then we hit this little stretch and it was on. It was just fish after fish of some really nice sized fish. And I had a nice bag. And then we came back and I just saw a pole in the middle of the river. And, a pole means, there's some rough ground, foul ground around it. And we stopped there and had a couple of casts, and I was using an SX40 and got 2 absolute massive fish right off the pole on the shallow reef. And we'd been fishing elsewhere in Tasmania that trip, and I thought, it's not a bad bag of fish. I didn't think it was over the top sort of thing. And then we weighed it in, and I was like, whoa, that's a good start to a comp.
Now, that's it's interesting because in that bag was undeniably the largest bream of the comp, but you were so excited about the bag you forgot to weigh it in, didn't you?
Oh, I weighed those 5 fish in, saw over 7 kilos come up, and just had this grin from ear to ear. Grabbed those 5 fish, strutted over to the tank, deployed them into the tank, and didn't think anything of it. And then someone grabbed me and they said, hey, you've probably got big bream there. Look at the size of that one. But rules being rules, and that's fair enough. It was too late to pull him out of the tank. It's pretty obvious which one it was, but that was fine. And Scotty Towner ended up weighing in big bream for that weekend. And being the absolute gentleman that Scott has always been and still is, grabbed the check from Simon, presented him the check, walked straight over to me and gave it to me, put it in my hand, and announced, we all know who caught the big bream for this weekend. So, proper gentleman, Scott is. Yeah.
It's interesting, is it? Because that technique you just explained then, catching your bag off Bedlam Walls on the squidgy, that colour, bloodworm colour, on a squidgy, was exactly how it was won again this year in 2020, mate. And that was by Steve Pryke, who I reckon was probably in primary school still when you set that record. So the generations are coming through, mate, and nothing much changes when it comes to what the fish want to eat.
No, I think the bream will always be eating bloodworms, so you'll be right there. Yeah.
Yep. Now, the other record that you've got, and this is, I don't know how it can be, but it's even more impressive than the 5 fish limit, is the biggest ever bream weighed at an ABT event. It was the Megabucks event at Foster in the early 2000s. Off the top of my head, I don't know exactly the year it was. Might have been 2003 or 2004 or something like that. Might even be 2002. But it was a 1.99 kilo yellowfin bream. And I remember, because I was weighmaster when that happened, that thing was an absolute tank of a fish, wasn't it? Take us through that capture, because that was not scringy line on Bedlam Walls, mate. That was a bit more hand to hand.
No, that was. I think we were back then. We were using Miller Rods Brawlers, and 8-pound braid and 14 and 16-pound leader, and we were fishing oyster racks all around Foster and just getting destroyed. It was absolutely amazing fishing, and to make that capture even better, I was with a good mate, Bushy, and we were doing the Megabucks together, and we were actually lost. And we'd gone around some islands. We were lost. We didn't know exactly where we were. But there was all these busted up oyster racks covered in shags and birds. And so let's just go over there. And we pulled up, and all you could see over these racks was tails in the air, bream, just tailing and feeding. And I looked at one, and he just looked so much bigger than the rest. And I threw back then it was the 65 mil bloodworm wriggler again.
Yes.
Just on a jig head. I threw it just past it, wound, watched this bream turn, come over, open its mouth, and just eat it. And he sizzled me under 3 racks. I was down on the side of Bushy's boat, just winding, got it to the net. Bushy missed it with the net. It went back under the racks. I was panicking, screaming at him. We got it in. We both stood there virtually hugging each other, staring at this fish. And then he just pats me on the back, throws it in the belly, and goes, "Now get another one."
That's it.
And that was that, you know. And all day I just kept lifting the lid of that well, looking in there. And it was having trouble turning around in the live well, that fish. It was huge.
Yeah. No, it was a dead set giant in the day, mate, and it was it turned a lot of heads. Back in that day at Foster, mate, we had crowds at the weigh-in. There's standing room only on the thing, and when you held that fish up, there was a reaction.
That year there was so many big fish caught. It was just, I remember just Josh Batterson getting 1.7 kilo fishes, and there was so many crew getting big fish out of the racks. It was just, Bushy and I just wanted to move to Foster. It was just the mecca of bream fishing and the style of fishing that we love, in structure, wrenching them out. And it was pretty funny that day. We were coming back. We had 10 good fish. I think it was 10 back in those days.
Yep.
And we stopped under the bridge, and I said to Bushy, "What are you doing? We've got a good bag." And he pulls out this packet of Berkeley drop shot minnows, and back then they had all the glitter and that on them. And he puts his hand in and gets all the glitter, and he puts it all over his face and rubs it all over my face. I'm like, "What are you doing?" You know? And he goes, "I don't want them knowing what we're using until the comp's over." And we weighed those fish in, we had glitter all over our faces, and you could hear people going, "They're using drop shot minnows. They're using drop shot minnows," you know? Like, he was just the master of anything, you know? Yeah.
He was the original secret squirrel, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah, he had a pretty good saying, you know. You've got the saying, "He who shares wins." Oh, Bushy had this saying, "He who shuts up wins a lot more."
That's it.
Yeah. So, they were great times.
Yeah, and Bushy, of course, had the 10 fish record for quite a few years. At Gippsland Lakes, out of his little alley craft, he had over 10 kilos for 10 fish, which stood, I think, until maybe Captain Kev or someone did it. So, mate, you South Coast guys have really had a bit of a stranglehold on the bream fishing for a while.
Yeah, like, I've been really privileged to learn so much from Bushy and from Captain Kev. I mean, you couldn't get too big of legends in the sport, in my eyes, and they're constantly refining and changing things. And the stuff I learned from them that I took to comps and won, it was all they're doing half the time. It really was.
Awesome, mate. Now, of course, from your ABT fame, we picked you out and we got you in the very original series of the Australian Fishing Championships, or AFC. And you did a couple of years in AFC before you thought, "I've done that, won enough trophies now, I'm going to go and do something else," mate. Take us through your favourite moment in AFC. And if you've got a couple's fine, but I want to talk about a couple of your favourite moments from a fishing point of view in AFC, because a lot of guys have commented about how they love watching the old school guys like yourself get it done. None of these nana drags or anything, mate. It's all old school. Tighten that sucker up.
Look, there was so many great moments, you know, traveling around with a great mob of guys and just hanging out. I'll always remember. But fishing moments, that very first year in the Yarra River, we weren't allowed to pre-fish. We were doing a TV show, and it come down to Tim Morgan or myself. Whoever wins the first AFC. Go at generally 7:30 by the time you've done all the filming, and off you go. And I think I'd fished there once before, and I didn't know anything about it, and did Tim. And Tim stayed in the harbour area where you could see fish tailing, but were probably harder to catch. I just went to a bridge, just picked one bridge with one pylon. It had flow, and threw out and got clunked virtually second cast. I thought, I think I'll just stay here. And the rest's history with that one. It was a pretty memorable day, catching a hell of a lot of bream.
Well, I think it was nearly 30 fish off the one spot when the rest of the field could hardly get a bite.
Yeah, it was, I don't know what I was doing different, or if they were just happened to be schooled there. I got lucky and made it work, I suppose, you know. So that was good, and definitely the session in the Hawkesbury, the yellowfin bream in under racks. You're up this creek all by yourself, catching these big yellowfin bream, dragging them out, getting busted off, and just having to put up with the odd bit of noise from the train going past. That was a special day too. You know, teamed up with Harry Watson that year, and we took it out, and Harry's become a close friend ever since. You know, so that was really memorable as well.
Yeah, look, I remember watching that episode, and every single fish you catch hits the net, and you go, "That's a kicker." And then the second fish hits the net, that's a kicker, and the third one hits the net, and you go, "Oh, that's a real kicker." And you know, it was one of those things where you didn't just win the event, you pants the rest of the field by a long way, mate. And that's the danger of you as a fisherman, is you don't go, I'm not going to go to light line and just catch a bag. I'm going to go nasty structure fishing with heavy line, and either they're going to win or I'm going to win. But there's going to be a fight.
Yeah. I don't mind the light screening line out in the open sand flats, but look, if I was going down to Meetung tomorrow for a bream comp, I'd be using 12-pound leader under those jetties, and if they go clunk, their head's going to get turned 180 real quick. Yeah.
Now let's talk about that. I didn't have that on the list here, but another one of your claims to fame, many claims to fame, is you won yourself the Yellow Submarine Triton, but it must have been, 2000 and mid-2000s when we had the Gippsland Lakes Grand Final based out of the Nicholson River. And I seem to remember the Tournament Angler Guide had pictures of you fishing at Paynesville there. And mate, take us through that last day at Paynesville, because the fish you caught in that grand final were amazing as well.
Yeah, they were all big fish. I'd done a pre-fish over there and just looked around and could see fish. So I thought, I didn't even fish. I just thought, I'll go back there. It's another anything to go right, you know. And the first day I got teamed up with Darren Sperling, who was a good friend from the South Coast. He was the non-boater, so that instantly makes you feel pretty comfortable, you know, someone really well already. And we fished all down Newlands Arms, and that day they were all in between the jetties on the sand flats, and we were catching them, and we had our limit really quick, and I just left, and he couldn't really realise why I left. I said, look, this has got to last another 2 days, and we were in and out of there by 9 o'clock, I think, and I got one kicker fish at the front of the Mitchell on the way back and called it a day. And then day two, I forgot who I was paired with, but things changed. The fish were all under the structure, and yeah, I was fishing resin heads. I made my own resin heads onto hooks out of surfboard resin and put bloodworm wrigglers on them so they wouldn't sink as much, and you just rip them around high in the water column, and was catching them that way. And it was really exciting. It was good visual fishing right in close, like half a cast, and watching them come out and eat it. So yeah, that was good. But day three, the dolphins were all there, eating all the bream under the jetties, and panic stations sort of hit in. And it wasn't until I think 11 o'clock I had my first fish, and I got the rest that day right down the back of Newland's Arm on a flat where I hadn't even been the previous 2 days. So in a way, I got a bit lucky that day too. In the end, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, mate. It's not like you're a bit of a natural fisherman, and you put a fish in the water in front of you, you inevitably find a way to catch it, mate. Really appreciate you having on board tonight, mate, and ABT Lockdown Live, mate. And I think that signifying how much AFC and ABT meant to you, you sent me some photos during the week that we're going to put up on the screen now. It's of, your framed AFC jersey from season 2 that everyone had signed, and your grand final win and your times with mates. I think your secret to success is you enjoy getting together with your mates so much and just catching fish that all of the success is just a bit of a bonus. Like, you don't think about the when you're out of the water, don't you? You're just going fishing.
No, exactly. I never used to think about it at all. It was just a trip away. Like, we had a good core group of guys that I just so look forward to seeing. And we'd all hang out. Some nights we'd get on it. Some nights we'd just go to bed early. But we'd all have a really good, honest friend relationship. And those guys are still friends today. We camp together now and things like that. We go fishing, and it's created a great bond and a great friendships. And also the sponsors I've got, and still to this day, they're friends. They're close friends. You ring them up, you chat, and they come to your birthday parties and things like that. Like, it's not all about winning. Some of the best memories I've got of is I've done well. For instance, in Tasmania, we went down there. I won St Helens, and Joffa, who I went with, won his first ever comp, and we're driving out of St Helens in my car, just looking at each other. I remember it. It was pure gold. And I was more happy for him than winning for me, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, it's good times, mate, and we really appreciate you spending the time tonight, wrangling that technology down into a ball and joining us tonight on Lockdown Live, mate. So look after yourself and have a good night.
Thanks, mate.
Well, there you go. An absolute legend of AFC and ABT was Chris Wright. We've been waiting a while. We finally got him on the show. And I don't know about you, but just hearing those stories of those giant bream in the racks at Foster makes me want to get back there and fish at ASAP. And who knows, if we're good luck, good management with this COVID thing, we could be back within a few months fishing some tournaments. We've got another comp on tonight. It's the Rapala comp. We have it every week. Some of the guys that watch us all the time will know what the question's going to be. It's going to be about, tell us about your favourite Rapala. And tonight it's the everything left in my Rapala box prize for the Rapala comp. So in here I've got a flat brim cap, which isn't me, but it may just well be you. We've got some Sufix advanced fluorocarbon in 10 pound, which would be great for straight through, say, a bass fisherman, fishing jigs. None of the ABT guys would probably use this, but there's a blue water lure. It's a sample item, not for resale. Thanks, Timmy. We've got some great little jerk baits for the brim guys. We've got some sinking Rapala countdowns, and we have a whole swathe of VMC hooks from Tokyo rigs through to soft plastic swim bait rigs, all that sort of stuff from Rapala. Tell us your favourite Rapala lure. It doesn't have to be a lure you buy now. It can be a 30-year-old Rapala, or it could be something that you really want to buy. Just name us a Rapala, name it in the side there, and Nicole will be picking out a winner for that prize later tonight. Also, I see there's a few legends in the sidebar here having a chat. We have, I see Scotty Towner's there. Scotty Towner, not only is he addicted to ABT fishing again, he is addicted to Lockdown Live. Thanks for joining us tonight, Scotty. I see Steersy's there as well, under his young fella's alias, mate. You've been playing his games, haven't you? And now you're talking on YouTube. But Steersy's there. If you've got any cranker questions, we saw his grade out at the start of this show. Roderick Walmsley, he was trying to get on. I don't know if he's on yet, but he was struggling trying to get on the chat there. If you've got Barra questions or Wonga questions, Gladstone questions, he's the man. I see Richard Potter kicking around making the odd comment. I'd dead set hit him up for a boat wrap quote. He loves doing them between, say, 10 o'clock and midnight. Or just talk to him on the chat now, and he is busy working at the moment. And Matt Langford's on here already as well. We're going to catch up with him a little bit later in the show because he is the current Sufix Bass Pro Angler of the Year until we can fish again. And who knows, maybe still after that. So next in the show, we've got we have Steve Fields from Hobie. We caught up with Steve earlier in the year at the Australian Championships and had a chat with him about the evolution of the Hobie series and the Hobie Worlds. So let's hear from him right now. G'day, Steve Morgan here. Fishing Monthly magazines and Australian bass tournaments. We are down on the south coast of New South Wales, and I've taken this opportunity to catch up with the one and only Steve Fields. Expatriate Australian, I suppose you are now, after you've moved back to America. And we've been wanting to catch up with Steve for a while because it's been a real journey for us and for kayak fishing over the last 10 or 12 years. And Steve, welcome back to Australia for the Hobie ACs.
It was always on the cards to come back. I wanted to see out the season. I've only missed one round for this year, and the buzz for me is seeing someone win for the season. They've qualified through end of the year points or from previous champions like Richard Somerton. So it was always good to come back. And it was also good because I can get to go back to the United States and kind of get into there. I've been there since about the 16th of October, and then move up to northern Florida. And then to come back here and you kind of get a different view of what you've just left and how beautiful this place is.
Yep. And look, it is a long history, and we're at this ACs now, which is like, you know, the ultimate event for kayak fishing in Australia. Let's go back 15 years where I didn't really even know what a Hobie was, and kayak fishing was this annoying thing where you had to pick up your paddle, then put it down and cast. And it got us into some cool places, but the mechanics were never really there for kayaks to be a really efficient fishing machine. So give the viewers, I suppose, a little bit of a background on how you helped that Hobie brand in Australia come from nothing to everything that it is today.
Everything generated out of the USA, and it really became with the Mirage drive, which we've seen a lot of different flavors, you know, all along the years, and then standard drives, then turbos and STs, and then eventually 180s, and now 360s. So it's all evolved. And then Hobie Cat back then, they had a good partner, a guy named Hank Parker, who was American Bass Pro, and he helped us steer into that fishing market. And that's kind of where it started. And then obviously my background fishing in the United States and bass fishing and seeing the tournaments, landing here and seeing, you know, when I got here, the first thing I got was the tournament guide. And you know, that right then, going, this is a fantastic thing. How can I take and get this tournament stuff going into the kayaks? And kind of we ran at each other, and it kind of went from there and developed. But I think that's where it really came from, is that we had a fishing platform, and we knew, like a lot of other sports, whether it be motorsports, car racing, anything there, there's a following, there's a club, you can get it going. And sure, is it commercially based? Of course, it's going to help you sell products. You know, Bathurst, what wins on Sunday sells on Monday. There's no different in anything we do out there, and that's still true today. So that's kind of the short version of how it evolved. We got into fishing and then took that platform into what's been done on a worldwide basis, and to be honest, really followed what you guys did. You still are, to me, the premium event in Australia.
I was quite negative about it at the start, though. You told me let's run some tournaments, and what did I say?
No. Well, I remember going up to you picked me up at the airport, we went to the office, and everyone looking around, and first kayaks was like, it wasn't that thing. It's like, kayaks. Why do I do this kayak?
Why do I want to do more work?
Why do I want to do more work? And, you know, we did there and leveraged it. And I think, honestly, I just had to get the checkbook out. And then you said, yep, we're doing kayaks.
That's
so
right. You wrote a check and it was like, nah. And then another zero went on the end. It was like, yeah. And then another zero went on the end. I'm like, we can do that.
It was good. And in looking back, it was a good investment. Not only for what you and I do, but I think the marine industry as a whole. And I know, like Daiwa, their main thing now, and talking to Greg and the guys yesterday, is growing the sport of fishing. And all of us are really, I mean, you're in that same ballpark. You're growing fishing, period, and that helps the whole industry. It helps the communities. I'm doing the same thing. Sure, there's a commercial interest, but there's nothing better now. I mean, I've seen this grow for a long time. Younger and younger people are getting into our sport. And we've got more people that are putting tablets and getting off, picking up a rod, and that's good for everybody, I think.
I think a really cool story is how the pathways have intersected over the years. When we started ABT, it was because there needed to be a pathway for someone in Australia to end up either Australian champion or world champion, or there was no pathway. You could try and do it, but it was going to be really difficult. It was really cool to see young Carl Jochimson, who we first met when he was a 14-year-old at a tournament. He had a high-pitched voice, no neck beard or anything like that, winning money off the guys, and he went through that whole pathway, still had to make his own jump, to self-fund into the US, but that's where you guys came in and were such a great sponsor for him. And I must have been a weight off everybody's shoulders to see him finally win that event last year. That was, to me, that was a point in time where I go, this shit has all come together.
It's, you know, looking back, because there's a lot of investment in Carl all the way through, but it was investment in, one is that someone from Australia going to the top of the ladder in a very professional sport that is very hard. They teach it in high school, in college, and it's part of the curriculum. And, you know, to take a guy, you know, there's a great story from Carl, but for us to finally get there and for him to win the way he did, every dime we spent was worth it at that stage. I got phone calls from CEOs of the company going, it was tight. Things were a little, what's going on here? Are you sure about this? He's going to win. He's going to win. He's going to win, because he just never gave up. And he finally did that. And the logo's here, and the story, and Kale and the dog, it's just spread around it. And even Bassmaster use him as an example of, if you believe in something, you can do it. And that applies to all walks of life. That's a great story.
Let's rewind a little bit to, that is one pathway, the pathway through to the Bassmaster tournaments. You've created a whole parallel pathway through the Hobie Worlds. And the Hobie Worlds, I think, in Australia is very accessible to people. Like, not everyone can be a Carl. One, it takes a special drive to do it. Two, it takes a ton of money. And three, it takes
Bucket
no commitments.
Loads of money,
exactly.
I'll tell you right.
But the Hobie Worlds is something that, you know what, someone can come and fish a few events here, show some talent, and all of a sudden they can fish somewhere in the world and they have a legitimate shot, even if it's not in their own country, at being world champion. Take us through the thought processes there, because the Hobie World started a few years after the Hobie Kayak Series. Why did you do it?
It's the same thing. It really, you know, we came into this as a surfing company to start with, and then got on the sailboats into the late 60s. And the very first Hobie 16 World Champions in a catamaran was in Hawaii. And one of the secrets is logistics. And we provided 60 brand new boats, and that allowed people to travel from around the world to come in and to compete at a level playing field. And all we've done is taken that same method of trying to do it, we've added a little bit of flavor to it and made it to where you qualify for it, rather than just like, I've got the money, I'm going to book an airline and go. And that's how it started in the early days. From there, the International Hobie Class Association, the same thing. You had regional and development and growth classes to get in that pathway, and we still have that now. I've just taken what we've had in the past, fine-tuned it a little bit, and then kind of grown it region by region. And events like this are a pathway to it, and same as in North America and Europe and Asia. So there's a pathway to get there. And the beauty of it is, as you know, and we spoke about it during the very first Hobie Fishing World Championships, that there's no way you're going to ship 60 power boats around the world and do it. The kayaks are made affordable and portable, and they were able to unsell those to the dealer network and to the end user at a very, very good price, and it kept growing the sport. So it's working now. I mean, this particular event is qualifying for Hobie Fishing Worlds 9. Number 10. I've just signed off on 9 3 days ago. It's taken a long time. I've had a lot going on since I left. But it's been a good pathway, and anyone can win who qualifies. It really weeds out a lot of people, but it means that the top guy, there is no top guy. They're all even, and they generally run about that 50 angler mark, which is a good number for us to use.
We know that it's a great event. We experienced the one on the Gold Coast last year, and a lot of people got to go and see that event. And just it's like the brotherhood of kayakers now. I've got a question about kayak tournaments. Like, we do them in Australia now. We've been doing them for over 10 years. When we started the tournaments in Australia, I never heard much about kayak tournaments in the US, but nowadays kayak tournaments in the US are big and they're big money. How did the evolution happen? Did they just go from zero to hero, or has it been a slow burn over many years?
It's been a slow burn, but I'll have to say, and it's not through me, it's just the fact that we developed a very good network system and sponsorships and found global partners. And all these global partners, mainly the tackle guys, saw where if a guy couldn't afford a $20, $30, $40, $50,000 boat, they're getting a kayak. The kayak guys were spending a lot of money, and their ears jumped up. One of the hurdles we had, though, was the boat the boats and the motor manufacturers. They're going, oh, we're going to lose sales here. The kayaks are going to, and actually it's a different pathway. And we all know through time that a lot of the kayak guys went out and bought boats, and vice versa. So again, it grew everybody, and we're great friends with BRP and Riley and stuff, and it works out well. So everyone wins on all that side of the thing. So
I think it's you go through periods in your life where you can afford to and you want to run a boat, but you have other periods in your life where you want it to be simple, and a kayak's really simple and inexpensive, and the wife doesn't go mad at you because you're spending half the mortgage money on the boat. So I really see that second pathway as a great driver for fishing in Australia. So I thank you for that, even though you buggered off back to America now.
That's all right.
We appreciate it over here. I want to talk about some of your pivotal moments, like exciting moments. There obviously would have been a few over the last decade. What are a couple of moments that stick out to you as the heart just went, that was awesome, and that you helped create?
the first Hobie Fishing Worlds. I mean, I kind of always done things on my own.
Yes.
And the States kind of let me do that up to a point. And when I floated this idea, it's just out in the atmosphere, like what's going on down there? You know, what are you doing? A world championships? And I go, here's why. We're going to grow this. And in 5 years' time, we're going to have events all over the world, just like the Hobie 16 Worlds. I said, go for it. To me, one of the pivotal moments, kind of a make or break thing, was exactly that very first one on the mid-North coast for us, because we combined that. Looking back, I wish I hadn't done it. Combine it with the normal series, the Australian Championship. There's 110 kayaks there. We had a lot of logistics to do.
Yes.
That's definitely one of the ones here.
And we had an international leading that after day one. Jose Chavez, I remember. How good was it to have an American turn up in Australia, do 1 or 2 days fishing for bream and power their catching? And we saw it only in the last one we had on the Gold Coast too. These international guys can fish. It doesn't matter if they haven't caught the fish before. They're such good fishermen, they work out how to do it.
They're good at the craft of fishing, first and foremost. And one thing that Jose and other internationals had said all along is that other comps in the States, it's very hush-hush. There's not a lot being told, where at a world's level, we have like that mentor program. And then the same happened when we went to the United States, where you pair up with some people that are like-minded fishermen, and they take them out and say, hey, you're a good angler, no problem. This is what I use, and here's why. You know, we can all YouTube it and stuff like that. In the early days, that wasn't there. So being able to share that information, it took a lot of the ego out of it and just brought the craft of fishing. And a lot of, I know the Aussies felt better helping the guys. If they're going to win, let's make them win on a fair plane, not to hide that spot and hide this lure. And I think that's one of the things that have come out of these tournaments altogether as a whole. We've gone through changes like the Powerboat has. We had a couple of years that I thought were not fun. Everyone was not enjoying themselves. They're doing it for the wrong reasons.
Trying to win rather than trying to have fun.
It's a day off. And when you're most relaxed, I mean, I think Chris Hickson, I was talking to Brad's sister the other day, when he's relaxed, he fishes well. And all the guys who are good at their craft, it's the same thing. And that's the whole relax. So after that, a lot of the people kind of got out of the sport. A whole bunch of new people came in the sport. I tell you what, it's a pleasure now to run those events. And you've gone through this cycle probably many more times than we have.
Yeah, we have. And it's I think the guys have gone through that adolescence of tournament fishing. They might only be 10-year tournament fishermen, not 30-year-old veterans like in the US. And in the US, I know the guys say, when it's my time to win, it's my time to win. And no matter what you do, how well you prepare, you only win when it's your time. We've seen it with Carl. He puts a lot of effort into it, but sometimes it just doesn't go his way. So I think that all stems off a theory we had at ABT, who shares wins. You know, as people working in the tackle and boating industry, the more people that learn how to fish and the quicker they can do it, the more tackle and boats they're going to buy. It isn't a difficult equation, and it's great to see that the kayaks have been through that change. Now, I remember in Series 3 or 4 of the kayaks, it got a bit secret squirrel out there, but then when enough people have won and people worked out that it's like, I can't always win, they relax a little bit more. So yeah, the Worlds in particular were great because it's a big thing to be a kayak world champion now. And there are guys still sharing information and talking to each other. And I was watching the videos that you took on the boat, and Jack Gammy's there coaching the Chinese guy that's following him. You know, he's telling him how to do it. And so it's a great mood, and I think it's a great thing that you've set up for fishing. I think looking forward, let's look forward another 10 years. Where do you see the sport of kayak fishing in Australia and internationally? Where do you think it's going to go?
Australia, I think, is going to stay kind of where we're at as far as the size, and that's based on population base. What I do see is more younger people come in. When I say younger, probably in that 25 to, say, 35 years of range. I think there's a group of people that, one is it's a weekend off, they want to have fun, and they enjoy mateship. They're going out and have a few lemonades, but they enjoy the competitive side. I see that getting very, very healthy. I know the sponsors are with us for a long time, and that's all part of making it work. I see Australia staying about where it is now, and the other side of the coin is you hit a point to where we're borderline on permits and locations to run events.
Yeah.
In some events, we've had to restrict to 110 or so units. So big is not necessarily better, and there's a point to where, you know, we can't run 100 people here for 3 days. It won't handle a lot of fisheries. There's some beautiful fisheries, and we get tons of emails, and same with Jim Berry. Why can't you fish here? Because one, it will barely handle 1 day of fishing with 80 people. Throw 110, and there's no way you're going to handle pre-fish there. So I think the size around 100 for our maximum is kind of where it needs to be from a management point of view, and I think from an enjoyment point of view, because you would lose touch with the average guy, the guy who doesn't necessarily always come on stage or always bag out. Those are the guys that we need to do that, because one day, their day will come.
That's right.
You know, like James Kilpatrick, he's been fishing for years. I hope you look, his first Australian Championships, and he's beaming ear to ear. That
He's loving being here. Yeah.
He's loving it. He's going, this is fantastic. So I think Australia-wide is good. International is where a lot of the growth is. We have mentored a lot of the countries in running these. Europe is in one, through Hobie Kayaks Europe, Gero and Richard Bart over there. And they have gone and grown where they're having European championships. That's growing. Europe, though, is massive in size, so the potential is there.
Yep.
Southeast Asia, there's some places we want to play with there, but I see more and more of that happening. And going back, tying all this together, is one of the other points I thought was a real turning point was the Gold Coast. When we first started, I think the Australians were the only ones who had jerseys.
Yep.
And when we go to international events, and Gold Coast, every team had custom gear.
Yep.
All the countries were there, and I see now that they're going, this is good. And the same thing, their sponsors are seeing what they're getting out of it, bang for buck on return on investment, and do it. But that level of professionalism has taken it from just being weekend warriors and standard events, Australian events, and European events, and worlds. I see that growing to a big stage to where I can see a smaller micro one, to where it would be an event of just world champions, tournament of champions kind of thing. So I see world championships, but I also see a point, and it may happen in Hobie Fishing Worlds 10, that we'll have another event, just world champions, and it'll be the cream of the crop, much like you see in some of the elite stuff today and the elite guys there.
And that's very good for broadcast, isn't it? Because you have a smaller field to follow. One of the things I've really loved in the last few years of how technology is getting cheaper and smaller and more compact. And I'm looking.
And still frustrating.
Oh, of course, it's still a recipe, and it's art, not science.
Yes.
But the day where we can have cameras on all of the boats and you can flick between all the boats and cover it like a real sporting event, I think it's a lot closer than we think. You know, I think that in a few years' time, the technology will be there. We'll be able to sit back in a trailer and see all of the feeds and put together a show, because the feedback I get from the industry is the old AFC years. You know, people used to love watching real guys fishing on the water, catching real fish that are qualified to be there. And, man, the ability to do that for a tenth of the price is really exciting for me.
We're not far. I think we're probably only 3 years away. I think it's sooner than what a lot of people think. And I think you're right. The technology there, a lot of it is going to be internet-based. Obviously, with the rollout of 5G, 5G is really the answer to it.
Yep.
We are still going to struggle because of places like this, remote, there's not a lot of antennas here, but we're getting close. I know the United States and Europe, there's some fantastic streams over there. Sweden is like 100 megabits a second both ways, up and down.
Mobile.
And both ways, it's all mobile. So we're not there where I think from a spectator point of view, which is going to draw the draw cards for other outside of industry sponsors, car sponsors, motorcycles, airlines, that's what they're looking for, is that airtime, no different than other big sporting event. The cameras are getting better. You've kind of dialed that in on power boats. We've played a little bit in the Gold Coast, and we're pretty happy with where we're at now. But I tell you what, in 3 years, it is going to be a buzz to watch. I think combine that with the technology that we do in our sailing. You can put a little GPS tracker, you can overlay a map, and you can see where you can go. So not only you can say, camera one on, and you can zoom in on an angler.
Here he is.
You can watch that track. And we see that on Bassmaster now. They've got the technology. They're doing it slightly different. They have bigger boats. They've got big camera guys, lots of gear. Us, we can't do that, but it's going to get so important. I mean, cameras have gone like this to this, and it's going to, 3 years from now, I think you're going to see the sport even go to a higher level of professionalism. And that's going to draw the airlines and the big industry, which makes it affordable for us to run these tournaments.
I really I appreciate that insight, and I appreciate the time that you've taken this morning for us, Steve, to have a chat about the history of kayak fishing. A lot of guys, as you say, just getting into it, mightn't have heard about some of the stumbling blocks early on. So I'm going to let you get on with running this Australian Championships. Thanks very much for tuning in and catching up with the legend of the Australian kayak fishing industry, Steve Fields.
Thank you very much, Steve. Always good to talk to you.
What them sons of fishes up to now?
Fellas, I give you the force trolling motor. It is the most powerful, the most efficient on the water.
Yep. Most powerful. We're really in trouble now.
And it's quiet, too. You can't swim here.
What a dumb bass.
Well, we did that interview with Steve Fields only about 3 or 4 months ago, and how the world has changed. First line, he was talking about airline sponsorship. What, is that Hobie sponsoring Virgin or what? Also, the handshake at the end, what was going on with that? No one shakes hands anymore. You're not allowed to do that. The world has changed, not necessarily for the better. And a personal shout out to Steve Fields, mate. Thank you for helping us grow the sport in Australia. A lot of non-boaters I see commenting on the live stream, missing their Hobie jerseys this year. With that transition, we didn't really get Hobie up to speed this year. But I'm sure we're going to have them back for 2021 and have some great Hobie jerseys. It's such a good fishing shirt to wear. Also, I see Shaun Clancy kicking around on the chat here too. So if you've got any Humminbird sounding Mega 360 questions, the big man is there, and it is his job to help people with Humminbird and all of their BLA products. So good to see Shaun on there. Just a reminder, if you haven't told us where you're from, throw that in the side there, because we are going to give away some prizes to the person that lets us know where they're from. We've got the What's Your Favourite Rapala comp. We got all of this gear ready for the person that tells us what their favourite Rapala is. Nicole will pick that out at the end of the night. We have got another comp, and I'm going to announce it now. It's the Sea Monkey Enterprises. That's Jamie Johnson. We met Jamie years and years ago when he drove a camera boat around for AFC. He lives on Lake Macquarie. He fished the Australian Open last year. Good bream fisherman, but he's bringing in a few baits, and he's a potential ABT sponsor. He's got 3 great little blades here. They're like a combination blade and tail spinner there. The brand, I don't know what the brand of those ones is. GC Zari Spin, Issei tackle. He's got some Issei jigs, some skirted jigs in the 1/4 to 1/2 ounce, and he's got some metals, and I'm pretty sure they're going to be just as home on the bass as they are on the blue water. His Facebook page is facebook.com/seamonkey.aus. So maybe look at Sea Monkey Australia on Facebook. You can see his gear. And on Instagram, Sea Monkey Australia. So Jamie, thanks for the donation of the prizes, mate. We're going to give them away. I'm going to ask a question that relates to what I just said. What did he drive a camera boat around for? Put it in the side there. If you think it's an easy answer, put the answer in the side there, and you could be in the draw for this Sea Monkey Enterprises product. The Issei jigs from Japan, they look like good gear. What did he drive the camera boat for? What show? Don't know. Some of the anglers have fished in it. Are talking on the side there right now. Next up tonight, we have a great segment sponsored by Mercury Marine called Show Us Your Boat. I do have some Mercury caps for this angler, who's a pro lure staffer, and he is going to show us his boat tonight.
Hey guys, just doing a quick rig rundown for ABT Fishing Tournaments Australia of my 2004 Triton TR175 powered by a 115 Mercury. Here's the power plan. It's a 2004 Mercury 115 2-stroke. It's been a pretty good motor for me over the years. Really reliable, rock solid. It's 4-cylinder, inline, 1.8 litre, I believe. Pretty good on fuel and oil. Pushes this boat along to about 42, 43 knots, full noise, and about 40 knots fully loaded. Currently throwing a 22 pitch Mercury Laser 2. Got my lock and haul there to keep it locked whilst I'm hauling it. Awesome piece of kit. so let's have a look up the back here. So in the bilge area, I've got a pair of 110 amp hour Hi-Tecs. Got my pumps down there. I've got a couple of Johnsons and a rule, and there's my crank battery over there. So pretty simple setup. Runs my motor guide all day. Those Hi-Tecs have been great batteries. On my Merc, I'm running C-Star hydraulic steering, which has been awesome as well. Moving into the back hatch up here. So this is where I just keep all of my stuff. Got my life jackets, a couple of spare hats, some tools, cleaning products, first aid kit, more toolkit down there, some fuses, all that sort of stuff. So it's basically where I just keep all my stuff that I need to keep this boat running in that back hatch there. Moving out to this side, I've got just an empty hatch there just for whoever's boating with me on that day. So moving up into the cockpit area, got my Lowrance HES Gen 2, all of my controls there, they're just analog controls, all my pumps and switches. Got a hot foot down there, 3 bench seats, which are nice and comfy as well. And down here, my stash of used plastics, and chuck them back into the environment, chuck them down in there. So just a few down there. Up the front here, we've got my 80-pound motor guide. It's the old Tour series. Yeah, I really like it. Easy to maneuver, it's powerful. It's been great. Up on the deck, I would love to have my foot pedal recessed. I might get around to doing that one day, but it is what it is. Got my rod straps here to lock down all my straps. All right, let's jump in and have a look how I've got it set up inside. Up here on the front deck, I've got my foot pedal for my motor guide. Got my HES Gen 2 5-inch flush mounted there. Plenty of room up here on the casting deck, which is really nice. So my main storage locker here in the front. I've got Plano 3700s just across here. This boat will fit up to 21 of them, I believe. So I've got heaps of storage for a little boat. Got all my lures here that I'd use throughout the day. Got some pre-rigged lures as well that I might use. They're handy to have on the fly. Got my tools and some scent, and small plastics here that I'll likely use throughout the day. So I think I've got just a heap of pro lures in there to keep me going. All right, so that's my main hatch. Moving across to my port rod locker. Really big locker here, awesome, will fit 7'6" rods pretty easy. I think I've got 7 or 8 in there at the moment, so it's a fantastic rod locker. Just awesome storage on this boat all around for a little 17-footer. Alright, so moving up into my starboard hatch, I've got starting over here, we've got heaps more plastics and just lures all in this box here. Just chuck it all in. Any type of plastic I might need, sort of the stuff I don't really use that regularly, I put over here in this locker. I got some spare line as well, extra line. Got my navigation stuff, my safety. I've got my chute there and some rope, and just some of my tools and extra stuff in there too. So that's how I set up my starboard locker. Back here on the back deck, just got our live well. So divider in there, you can see that. 135 litres, so massive live well. keeps those fish nice and happy all day. So my boat's sitting on a T-Rex double bunk trailer. LED lights, 15-inch alloys. It's been a great trailer. Can't complain, tow's awesome. So the actual hull is 17'3". It's a 2004 model Triton TR175. It rides awesome for a 17-footer. Really takes on the rough stuff well. Punches well above its weight, I think. It's just got a great ride. One of the other things I love about this boat is just the amount of storage in it, the size of the lockers, the size of the live well, the fuel tank's huge, over 100 litres. So just everything about this boat, it just punches above its weight. It's a fantastic little rig, so I love it. So there you go, guys. Quick tour of my Mercury-powered Triton 17-foot bass boat. Hope you enjoyed it. If you've got any questions, feel free to ask. All right, see ya.
Well, there you go. How mint was that for a 2004 model boat? Anthony really keeps it in tip-top condition, has all of his stuff heaps more organised than I have in my boat, mate. Well done on that, and a great review of your boat. We're still taking show us your boat segments. If you've got a Mercury on the back and you want to film one, send it to us, and we will run them as long as we are running ABT Lockdown Live. Next up, we have Matt Langford. Now, Matt has the dubious title of being the current and reigning 2020 Sufix Bass Pro Series Angler of the Year. He's joining us on the chat board here tonight, but I had a chat with him a little bit earlier in the week to run through that awesome event that he had at Lake St Clair and to talk a little bit about the USA. So I think one of the fans of COVID at the moment must be Matt Langford. Matt, you are leading Angler of the Year at the moment, and until we're allowed to do stuff again, you are going to be leading that thing for a fair while more, I think. How do you feel about it?
It's a strange situation actually, but yeah, feel good to be leading AOY going into, I don't know what we'll go into when we end up getting back to it, but yeah, it's a good feeling to be leading. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with the situation.
I couldn't actually believe that your win at Lake St Clair was your very first ABT win, mate. It seems like you've been fishing for a while, and it was just must have been one of those goals that took a little while to achieve.
Yeah, it was. I did a couple of electrics a few years ago, and then did the Bass Nation series for a while, but I was keen just to fish any series and just try and get in with the professional side of things. But yeah, to get a win in ABT was definitely something I definitely strive for anyway.
Well, the other thing I remember about that event is when I'm editing together the highlights, there was that one capture that you caught on the little Megabass Siglet that you threw it in, and it was like Dad said, it was like the dog catching the frisbee. The bass literally hit it the second it hit the water, and it's playing in the background there now, mate. Talk us through that catch. That was ridiculous.
Yeah, I think with the fish they were setting up under shag trees, and I reckon half the time they could see the cicada coming because it would literally touch the water and they'd boil on it or they'd smash it. Sunday, there's a couple of good catches on Sunday on camera there, but Saturday it was nearly every fish was just all over it within a second of it hitting the water. So it was pretty epic to have a top water bite like that.
How do you reckon a bass feels when it looks and it sees a blob coming down and it's thinking, oh, here we go, hold the nose, another mouthful of shag crap, and all of a sudden it's a nice juicy cicada, mate. That's gold for them.
Yeah, I don't know. Like we've had a bit of experience, I guess, with sooties eating poo, but I didn't realise bass liked it so much. So yeah, it's pretty pretty cool.
I reckon it'll shut Moddy up because Moddy always gives us bream fishermen shit about, oh, they eat bread, mate. It's like, well, you know what? Bream eat shag shit, and so do bass now, so it's all even, mate. Everyone's even.
Yeah, that's right. They'll eat anything if you put it in front of them.
Tell us through, mate. I wasn't at that Sinclair event, and it happened as COVID, as you know, shit was getting real for COVID. You know, when we left, we were allowed to have, I think, 500 people event or 100 people event outside. So it was all cool to go when everyone went to it. But coming back, everyone was nearly like scurrying across the border to get back home. What was the mood like at the lake? Was there anyone really worried, or was everyone just happy to have a final sort of hit out?
I think it was good. Like once we were on the water, we sort of forgot about it. But I mean, the way it was set up with the meetings and stuff, like we weren't gathering in groups. It was all go and register at your own pace. But you know, even with the presentation at the end, everyone was sort of spread out. We could still talk to each other. But I travelled with Mick Johnson down there, and we heard on the radio as we were leaving, they were looking at shutting the borders, and we had 24 hours basically to get back to Queensland, and that's literally what happened. We got across the border, and the next day after we got home, they closed it all off. So it escalated pretty quickly.
Yeah, there was no stopping at Glenbourne for a quick jigfish on the way home, was there?
No, no. We sometimes stop at Copeton as well, but yeah, that we ruled that one out pretty quick.
Yeah, mate. The gear you used at Sinclair, I know you got a few of your rods and reels and outfits there, mate. I want you to for the bass guys, let's run through what the Angler of the Year uses on their boat, mate. I'm going to milk this for all it's worth, mate. So give us a look at some AOY setups here at the moment.
Okay. Did you want to see them or just talk
I want to see. Pick up the cicada rod first, the one you threw the cicada on. I know I can't see the whole thing, but show us the real end. Don't stick it in the ceiling fan.
Yeah, I'll try. I'll make sure I don't break it. They're pretty precious. But this is the outfit that I used. This is an extra finesse long cast or an XFLC. This is a custom one, but Ian Miller, I should say, is he's brought in a production line. So the extra finesse long cast is one of those in the production line. It's a 7'3". You know, it's a pretty good all round spin setup. The cicada I was using is this little guy. It's a Mega Bass Siglet. And I
just up nice and close to the camera, mate. I want to have a like. Is that the tournament winner lure right there?
That's the one Saturday, but I tied this guy back on. The one I used Saturday was a smaller version. I think it was a junior. But yeah, this one, same brand. It's the Siglet. And just rig with a extra stinger hook at the back on the actual the split ring. So just to have an extra set of hooks, you know, because they were busting up pretty hard on it. But Saturday I had a few missed opportunities, so I just put that extra hook on there. So.
That's cool, mate. This is the first time I've seen that modification, and it might be something that the Brim guys might try as well. Did it enhance the hookups?
I believe it did, yeah. Like I said on the Saturday, because they were hitting it so quickly, some of them were just all over it and they'd engulf it. But like I said to you before, I think that at times they were actually watching the cicada flying through the air and they were hitting it as it hit the water, and I missed a lot. So it has an underbelly treble there, but I thought to myself, I'll throw another one on top just to see how it goes. And yeah, definitely enhanced it. They weren't blowing up on it as hard on the Sunday, but it definitely helped. And I thought it may get tangled up with your line and your lure, but it didn't really. So it was all about just landing that lure and just wiggling it on top and getting that vibration, and that's what they were going for.
That's awesome, mate. Well, that was the majority of your fish came on that top order, and let me say that it is cool to win any tournament mainly on top order. That is the shizzle. But you did have another couple of key outfits that you were using there. I want you to run us through those as well, and just and outline the grab bag techniques you needed for Sinclair.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess I'll go through the pre-fish. It was all about that. You know, we found that top water bite and found the shags, but I also knew that you could catch them. The dam sort of set up similar most times we go there. You know, obviously in wintertime they eat a plastic a heck of a lot better than summertime. But I'll show you this other rod. This is another production model of Barra's. So it's a Miller rod. It's a Finesse Freak LC. It's a 7'6" this model. It's got a bit longer handle.
Yep.
And it's called a finesse freak for a reason, because you can throw. It's designed to throw those lighter style lures, and especially the lighter jig heads and that sort of stuff. Got a 1/4 ounce head. Generally, I throw a quarter's probably as big as I'd throw at Sinclair, and then you can go down to really light stuff. But quarters, 1/6 and 1/8 is generally what I'd throw. And because Sinclair's so full of weed, generally it's a really good combo. It's a little bit of extra length on the rod. You can get those long casts. It will cast well with really light jig heads, but it's just a really good combo. And to be able to get that long cast out there, hit the weed, and be able to twitch it out off that weed, not getting dug in. You can twitch it up high and keep it out of that weed, and that's what the bass generally in wintertime really like. The plastic bite wasn't overly great for the Sinclair round down there last time, but if you really persisted, me and Mal, once we got our fish on top water and Mal got his on the eye waver, I just said to Mal, I said, we'll go and look for a bank that we haven't seen many boats on all weekend, and we'll just fish it, and we'll just try and get an upgrade. We had 5 decent fish, but I knew there was 2 fish there we could potentially throw out. So one really good one. I reckon we probably fished a kilometre of bank and never got a bite, and then all of a sudden, you get that one bite, and it was a really good upgrade. So sometimes it just pays to have the right gear, put your head down, and keep fishing, and especially if you're looking for a big one.
Well, I tell you what, a lot of the guys like fishing a jig for their big ones, and you've got a jig outfit there that you reckon's pretty snappy doodle.
Yeah. This one here, it's a switch. It's a Switch Freak UL. It's I guess it's an all-round bait cast rod, but it was really designed for it's a really good design for fishing a jig. And I know a lot of other guys fish this. So it's the Switch Freak UL. It's really well balanced in the hand. It's great for fishing jigs. You can fish, lipless crankbaits. You can fish spinnerbaits, whatever you want. But a lot of guys use this rod and fish jigs. I know
Dane used it last year in the grand final. Dane Price,
yeah, Dane. That's right. Yeah, Dane Price used it at Sinclair last year to win, and it's the exact same rod. So, it's real good rod in the hand. I throw it. As soon as we get an edge bite or something in structure, this is always in my hand, and really, it's hard to put down. But the jig, this one of our kicker fish to get us in a reasonable position on the Saturday was caught on this setup. It's got a 3/8 Bassman jig, skirted jig, and just a little craw trailer on it, and just fished. Once we sort of went through and fished all those cicada trees, put this in my hand and went back through those trees and just looked for any of those fish that were sitting down deeper and not coming up and hitting those top waters. So, another good little outfit. And I guess just it's good to be able to target those fish that are down right in amongst the trees.
Well, I think it's, there's something to be said for a bass that likes eating the crayfish and not a pile of shag shit. So, classy bass, mate, the classy ones.
I think I'd rather eat a yabby than some bird shit.
Exactly, mate. So let's, with that Miller rod in your hand there, mate, with a bit of your accent there, you are like a bit of an Australian version of Carl Jockinson at the moment, mate, and that segues us into the next bit of the story. We saw your social media last year when you went to the Bass Nation Championships.
Yeah.
And, it was a dicey period for Bass Nation because they decided to shut up shop over here. So there must have been a time where you thought, maybe this isn't going to happen. But to his credit, between Drew and Carl and everyone together, you made it all happen. Give us a bit of a rundown of that journey to the US because, mate, you gave that a solid scare, didn't you?
Yeah, it was good. In the end, it came out really well. There was stages throughout that year leading up to it where I was a little bit nervous about things because, obviously Bass Nation closed and things weren't looking good. But like you said, Drew and Lauren came through, got us over there, they organised everything, and the bass crew over in the States really, obviously the guys that have been there before had made a really good impression. So a lot of guys were keen to meet me and Annette. It was just myself and Annette over there in Anderson. That was in South Carolina at Hartwell. But yeah, they just put on a really good show for us. But yeah, leading up to it, you know, I was worried about trying to organise a boat and that sort of stuff. But Carl, I speak to Carl every couple of months, and we always try and keep in contact via messages and stuff as well. But Carl just said, don't worry about your rods, don't worry about your tackle, don't worry about anything. I'm just going to lend you all mine. But that was the exact words he said. He just said, just take all mine. So basically, he just handed me his whole life and said, here you go.
Don't crash it. That's awesome, mate, isn't it? And you know it's the right gear. You guys share a lot of sponsors as well. So, you know, you're ticking all the boxes there, mate. And I just want you to run us through some of the last day, because we'll be able to pinch a little bit of footage of the weigh-in here. You went in, you know, very highly placed into the last day of competition there. Like, how do you reconcile that in your head? You've come from Australia where everyone knows what's going on. There's no surprises over here, mate, but you get thrust into a position where if you win the event, you're going to go to the Bassmaster Classic and say, thanks for the loan of your boat, Carl. I'll be taking it to the Classic next year, not you, Tiger. Like, what goes through your head on a day fishing on the water like that? Is it just another day on the water, or do those little thoughts creep in about what if?
It's funny you say that, because the first two competition days, I never really thought too much about where I was placed, because I guess the pre-fish for it was really good and everything, and I knew I could catch fish, but I wasn't sure of what sort of weights there were. And you hear things about all the other competitions, but I knew I was on a little bit of a pattern where I could catch consistent fish. So I guess the best thing was I knew I could catch 5. But then after, you know, the first day, I think I was in 10th or 11th or something. And then the second day I moved up into equal second, I think it was. It wasn't until we got home, we got back to the hotel, and me and Annette sort of sat down, had a little bit of time to sort of think about what position we were in. You know, that it really sunk in. But what really hit me was the next morning we had a meeting with the bass organizer for the event, John Stewart, and he had the 10 guys there, and he was looking around at each and every guy, explaining what position you're in. And then he looked around and he said, he was looking at me at the time, and he just said, you guys are 8 hours away from making the Bassmaster Classic. And it was just like someone took a hammer to the side of your head and went, holy smokes, we're in a big position now. So it was pretty, I guess in a way, you know, I fished quite a few tournaments in Australia, but we kind of went about it the same way as we'd fish a tournament in Australia. It was just in a foreign country on a different lake fishing for a different species, but it all kind of flowed the same way, I guess. So yeah, it was pretty wicked.
Let's talk about a bit of a sliding doors moment. Just say you got a couple of kickers on that last day. What's the first thing you say to Carl as you're driving his rig back up his driveway? Do you say, you better not make the Classic, mate? I'm going next year, not you. How do you have that conversation? What would have happened?
I know. Well, we actually had a conversation when we were at the hotel. He rang that night before the last day, and he just was. We were both beside ourselves, squealing on the phone and stuff. But he just, there was a position where I kind of, you know, Carl's just worked so unbelievably hard over 10 years or 9 years he's been there, and for me to go over and just slip in there, I kind of would have felt bad, I guess. But at the same token, you know, there was an avenue that we could make it from Australia to make it as well. So I guess that was an opportunity. And that, like you said about just getting those couple of kickers on that last day, that's all I really needed, because every day leading up to that, I'd catch my 5, and then I'd move heaps of spots. I'd fish 30 or 40 little points, and then just try and catch those kickers. And they came on the first 2 days, but on that last day, I still caught 9 or 10 fish, but just didn't get those 2.5, 3 pounders. And that's just how it rolls sometimes.
It's awesome, mate. We enjoyed watching it from over here, and it's keeping the dream alive for all the Aussies, you know. And in a way, we sort of do want Carl to be the first Aussie in the Bassmaster Classic, because let's face it, he has really put in the real hard yards, but never be apologetic for succeeding in the back channels, mate. If you find a shortcut there, just take it, mate. It's there. You didn't make it, you just took it. So let's hope that in the future we do get to see Carl at the Classic there, mate. One final thing I want to talk about is a common sponsor that we have. Like Garmin is a very good sponsor of ABT, and we use a whole suite of Garmin action cameras to chronicle all of the highlights in the Bream and the Bass events. I've only started running one of the Garmin Force Electrics on my boat, and I noticed you've got one on yours there as well. And I've been blown away by how awesome it is, how quiet, how sturdy, saltwater proof, all the things. But I'm just about to take the dip into the live site stuff, mate. Am I doing the right thing by getting into that or what? Tell me about it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's changed the way, and I guess you'll hear it all the time. The guys that use it's changed the way that you see fish and fish behaviour. The first, you'll know as soon as you put it on, you'll see what they're doing in front of live on the screen in front of you, and it's one of those things. You get an image that comes on, you can see the archers, they're there, but then all of a sudden you can see them live, and you can see if they've got their heads down, are they actively feeding on bonies? You can see them race up from the depths and attack a school of bonies. And at Sinclair it was awesome because I had a string of probably 200 trees, and there was 6 particular trees that held the bulk majority of fish. And as soon as you sweep that electric motor with that live scope on it, you can see every single fish that's underneath there. And even pointing your live scope at the tree you're fishing at, casting that lure in and seeing the fish come up to it, it's all happening live in front of you. It'll just change the way you look at fish and their behaviour, and to watch them actively feed and chase your lure. It's something totally different.
I think it's something that the bass guys in particular would love, and the Barra guys love it too, because a lot of my fishing, I suppose, involves, I know what they're doing because I can just see them out there in the clear water. I know they're ignoring me because they're doing this out there. But bass is a little bit different. The water's a bit deeper. The fish don't often swim around in full view. So, no, it's cool technology. Yeah. They're a great sponsor of ABT, and we really love seeing the bits and pieces that you put up. I know I've watched some of the stuff that you put up just going, my jaw is dropped. It's amazing stuff, mate. So, look, thanks very much for joining us tonight. We hope you retain this 2020 Bass Pro AOY title until we fish the rest of the tournaments, mate. But I know that you're going to hold it for a long time because, let's face it, and for the people listening on the show here tonight, we're going to start running tournaments again when we're allowed to run them and when it's morally the right thing to do. If we can do it without high risk, then we're going to jump back boots and all and do it. But until that point, hey, we're talking about it on a Friday night, mate, and thanks for joining us tonight. We appreciate your company.
Cheers, Steve. Thanks for having us.
Well, there you go. Some great insight from Matt Langford there. And who wouldn't want to be in his shoes when he was over there sniffing a chance at the Bassmaster Classic and going into the last day of the Bass Nation Championship in second place. And what a great guy. Carl just saying, take my life and go fishing in it. That's exactly how Aussies look after each other overseas. Couple of things. I noticed we got Marcel Krieger on there, ex-ABT staff. G'day to you, Marcel. They're having a heated discussion there about surface fishing. I think we got Shaun Clancy still on there. We got Matt Langford still on there. I know Roderick Walmsley's coming up next, and he's our last big segment. He's on there too, answering questions. And I've got some competition winners for you right now. So let's go through. And these people, I need you to send us a message to the ABT Facebook page. Australian Bass Tournaments Facebook page. Send us a message with your address and I will post this stuff out here on the weekend. So we have got, who have we got here? We have, where are you from? We have Paul Langley from Aberglasslyn, New South Wales. We know Paul. He, Mercury owner, won a tournament last year. So Paul, you get yourself some AFC kit and some Costa merchandise. The Rapala pack is going to Ruth Beebe for her Rapala X-Wrap is her favourite lure. So that Rapala pack's going to Ruth. Send us a message on our Facebook page. And the Sea Monkey comp with all the SI jigs, the blades, the medals, that's going to Jack Allwood, who said AFC was where Jamie drove the boat around. So Jamie, remember again, his company, Sea Monkey Enterprises, look him up on Facebook and Instagram. Potential future ABT sponsor right there. We do have one more comp though before we go into Roderick Walmsley. I've got, because we're talking Barra, Xeric, sponsor of the Barra Tour. I got some Xeric swim baits, some flat shads, jerk baits. I've got 4 Xeric lures there, and we are going to give them away in Roderick's segment now. It's quite a difficult question. You probably can guess it. It's going to go like last week where we're going to go until someone gets this number right. How many Barra ended up on the scoreboard at the Venom Rods Barra Australian Open last year? It's not how many were caught in total because only your best 5 were caught. How many were on the scoreboard? Get guessing there now and Nicole will pull it up when you get the correct number. It's somewhere between 0 and 100. There's a hint for you for a start. Get guessing on there and away we go. Before then though, we are going to... Here, we're going to watch my favourite ad from Sufix, and then it is straight into Rod Walmsley to talk everything Humminbird and Barra.
What do you see?
Reminds me of muskies.
I love your mind.
They call it a bucket mouse because he's got a bucket mouse.
Wow.
I just want to tell you, I've been slaying the walleye lately.
That is so hot.
Ever bumped the stump?
Sufix 832, the line that changes the game.
So speaking about Humminbird products, I've got a Humminbird Pro Staffer here. He's also a Fish-Tec Solutions Pro Staffer representing lots of the coolest brands you see on your tackle store walls. And he's got a bit of a history that we're going to tell you a little bit about tonight. Roderick Walmsley, welcome to the show, mate. Welcome to ABT Lockdown Live.
Yeah, mate, it's pretty good to be here.
Mate, now, we all see your social media at the moment, and you live in Gladstone, so it's all about the barras and the cool saltwater fish. But a bit of a secret from your past, mate, is you were a bit of a gun brim fisher back in the day, mate. You're only a little pipsqueak away from winning the 2007 Brim Grand Final on Lake Macquarie, mate. Tell us a little bit about how Benny Godfrey just put his nose across the line in front of you in that one.
Mate, it's actually funny you brought that up because I was watching some of your guys' archive footage the other night, and I was, probably the same as a lot of the old competitors. The wow, we were sitting there going, wow, look at, I saw Mike Connolly come cruising past in a little side console, Simo, quite a lot of the old competitors going past, and you sort of get a bit nostalgic. And I did remember that grand final with Benny Godfrey where we were fishing on the Swansea Bridge together, him on the right-hand pylon and me on the left. And, our bags were almost identical. And on the last day, I think previous grand finals, the 5 guys went into the last day. And on that one, because we had those tournament boats, it was only the top 4. And when it was all said and done, Benny picked me by 24 grams and ended up going on to win the boat easily because counting from memory, Warren Carter, Cam Woodham, none of the guys that fished the flats, any of them could fall out the bag, and the bridge with those medium-sized winter fish seemed to pay off, and Benny ended up taking it out.
Oh, we won't call it a Bradbury win because he did achieve the full bag the whole way through the tournament. But yeah, it was a win that when we looked at the grand final 10 years later, the weights were just incredibly low compared to the weights that Graham Franklin caught to win it. There were 5.5 kilo bags coming in, and that was just reflecting the quality of the spawning fish that were coming through, mate. So we do know that you've had your moments in brim fishing, and you're a South African, mate. You're like an Aussie. You're pretty versatile at doing everything, because some of the stories you've told me over the years involve catching big cob or mulloway in the surf over there, doing crazy things to catch them, just like the guys over here do.
Yeah, mate, there's some pretty cool fisheries in South Africa. Extremely large yellowfin, those cob or mulloway in the surf, the largemouth bass fishery, and even the freshwater carp scene. And all of those fisheries taught me, really good lessons about specific techniques with lures. And when I eventually came over to Australia, and I found out that just about every species in Australia eats a lure, even the things without teeth like whiting. It was like, how good is this? That everything that I'd learned or cut my teeth on in South African lure fishing, it's probably most importantly the largemouth bass. I could use that knowledge here, on the flathead, on the whiting, on the bream, on the bass, and even offshore for the snapper, spangled emperor, etc. So yeah, it was a really good, smooth transition fishing-wise for me, and the bream, yeah, as well. Quite often once you get up to these sort of northern areas of Queensland, bream fishing is not something that's a priority, but those initial lessons learned on the bream fishing, some of that ultra light 2-pound and 3-pound stuff in the seaway rock walls and those big currents, those little lessons I learned then sort of set me up for the barra fishing up here.
Well, let's talk a bit about the barra fishing. You're in Gladstone, so Lake Awonga is on your back door. And it's a lake where you've seen both sides of it. You have seen an Awonga devoid of fish, and you have been through this process where the Gladstone Area Water Board have hyper-stocked it, and you have seen those year classes of fish coming through. Tell us about the best day you've had fishing on Awonga in the new era since these new fish have come to size. Like, tell us about the insane fishing I expect you've had.
Oh, yeah, that I could probably single out one day straight away there. And funnily enough, generally when you talk about barra, you think about, meter 20 and, meter 15 and exceptionally large fish. But with those year classes coming through, that sort of 75 centimeter size fish was a pretty good average fish. And it wasn't last year, it was the previous year. And a good friend of mine, Jason Harwood, myself and him went down to the dam, and we just fished our way through one of the bays. And it was interesting because I'd been on the dam 2 or 3 days prior, and I caught the fish on a section of bank that had dirty water on it. There was a bit of wave action, but for some reason it wasn't a back of a bay or a point. It was just halfway down a flat bank. There was a bit of dirty water, and I probably caught 5 or 6 fish late afternoon out of that dirty water. And I thought, well, that's pretty good. I'll come back here in a couple of days. And Jace come down to my house. We went down. Anyway, cut a long story short, we rolled up at the exact same bank. The water was super clean, and I fished my way down the bank into the back of a bay, and I hadn't actually caught any fish in that bay up until this afternoon, and it was probably about 5:30, 5:45, and it was the end of September, and we rolled into this bay, and I've seen a heap of fish on the side imaging on my Humminbird as I turned the boat on the electric, and I was using it's actually one of Fish-Tec's lures, an Imakatsu, a live roller, which is a really shallow diver that floats head first. And I was twitching this lure through the grass, and the first cast I put in there, the fish almost pulled it right out of my hand as I was looking down at the sounder. And it started a session on dock, pretty much right on dock. And even if I must put a time frame on it, there was probably about 45 minutes to an hour. And I think we boated 21 fish, and we would have had a similar amount of bites and jump fish off. It was pretty chaotic. We weren't netting the fish. We were just pulling the fish up to the boat, lipping them, unhooking them and going again. And I've never seen barra fishing like that in a dam, in that there was actually barra chasing bony bream, boiling on the surface, no different to, mac tuna or longtail tuna in this tiny little bay. And I'd probably say it blew my mind in that there was that many fish. And we had a westerly change come through it was literally at 7:45, because I remember looking at my watch going, geez, we had a good session. 7:45, and it literally, like someone flicked a switch from a bite, nearly every cast or every other cast, to nothing, to dead, absolutely dead. The boat swung around on the electric. And pretty much we sat down. We each had a cold one to enjoy the rest of the evening, and then we went home. But unbelievable fishing! If you get the dam, and we're in a fortunate position in that it's 20 minutes from my house. I can pretty much hook my boat, drive down to my shed, straight off to work, fish till just after dark, and come home, reverse the boat in, and go to bed. And so we get to see a lot of those things evolve on the dam. You know, the temperature slowly increasing, those fish starting to get active, and we can be on the dam in those really opportune times. And that was just one of those nights where we were on the dam in the right place at the right time, and we got to experience a pretty cool session.
That's awesome, mate. Now, one of the events, and it's one of our prime events we run up there, is the Venom Rods Barra Australian Opens. I think it's slated for early October, and fingers crossed we'll all be sweet then, and that's going to be an event that we can run as per schedule. How's the lake going to fish in early October this year? It's as long as it doesn't run over, and it looks like it's not going to, it's going to be pretty good fishing, isn't it?
I think so, Steve. You know, you guys were very unfortunate this year. We had pretty good fishing leading up to, you know, your Oz Open this year. And then we had that cold snap literally 3 days before the event.
And it was cold, wasn't it? It was freezing.
Oh, yeah. It was freezing. You know, I don't think I'd had a jumper on for ages. And I actually come down to the briefing to say good day to you guys. And I had a jumper on. It was freezing. I think Adam from Tackle Warehouse had trackies and nug boots and a hoodie on or something. I can't remember. But yeah, you know, those are the key little things that will affect it. I think you're in with a better chance in October because there's more consistency. That water is already warm. So when you guys had it in September, the water was sort of around that 23, 24 degrees, 25 degrees. It pushed up to about 26. And then we got that cold snap and it dropped back down to 22 degrees. And they don't like that sudden change. Whereas in October, the water's that little bit warmer. And when you do get a cold snap, it doesn't get quite as cold as the previous month in September. So you're in with a more consistent pattern and a consistent time frame to get more fish. And if you do get a cold snap, hopefully it wouldn't affect the dam as badly as it would in September. Yeah,
and look, when we were preparing for that event last year, you pulled me aside. You were telling me a few stories that have stuck in my mind, and one of them involves your Humminbird 360 units. And we've already talked to Shaun Clancy on the show tonight about the new Mega 360, which, you know, is like 360 on steroids and the clearest stuff ever. Tell me the story about Barramundi and anchor ropes that you learnt with your Humminbird 360, the old version. I love this story.
Yeah, look, we can learn a lot about fish if we don't put a lure in the water. And quite often, because we have the luxury of being so close to the dam, you know, for us, we can go out there and on my previous boat, I had the older model 360 mounted on the stern. And I used to go out there and just pull up on a spot that I'd fished previously, run the 360, and I'd put the anchor down. I generally, most times in the dams, when I'm going to spend a prolonged period at a spot, I'll anchor. I just believe it's quieter than the electric going on. In saying that, you know, we've had some really good sessions where, you know, the electric's blown out of the water and the barrel's still biting. But I think it's probably more our mindset than anything else. So I generally always put my anchor out, and we'd sit there with the 360 going, and sort of right on dark or on a, you know, at one of those spike in the bike periods, you'd actually physically see a school of barra move in, and that may be, you know, anything from 4 to 15 to 20 fish actually move in a group into a bay, a point, a bank. And you'll see them swim around on either side of the boat. You know, they'll go into the weed or they'll go on the outside of the boat, and they'll do a few laps. And on the first occasion that I did this, I actually went down and I was sitting there watching, and I seen a couple of fish go out the front of the boat, and they sort of went out to the outer limit of the range of the 360, and they sat there. And I thought, geez, that's strange. What would they be doing out there? And I didn't really figure it out until the second time I went there, and they did exactly the same thing. And I thought, well, the only thing that's out there is my anchor and chain, and I don't run a plonker or I run just my standard anchor gear with chain. So I would assume that chain would make a little bit of noise. And what the barra were doing was they were running out and sitting adjacent to my anchor rope. And as a tester, I had a 7-inch castake on one of my rods in the rod lock, and I thought, I'll give it a crack. Made a big long cast as close as I thought I could get to the anchor, and first cast I got about 5 cranks in and caught a fish about 85 centimeters, which, whether it was fluke or actually one of those that was sitting next to the anchor, I'm calling it, for the one that was sitting there, success. And And since then, I've seen them do it several times. They'll actually go out and then go and sit out. Whether there's bait fish attracted to that or they're just attracted to that noise, I don't know. But yeah, cool story and one of those that actually happened. Yeah.
Wow, and you know what? I feel like I'm just going to have to unscrew my hydro wave now, throw it out, and just rattle some chain over the edge of the barra tool, mate. That's probably as agricultural as you need to be.
Yep.
The other story you told me back then, and it's something that stuck in my mind as well. It's something that the bass guys do a little bit, but I've never heard of a barra guy doing it. It's fishing that heavy timber with jerk baits. You have a little modification that you do to skew the odds in your favour. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we all know that a big single hook rig plastic is a pretty good way, pretty effective way to catch barra. And with the admin of stingers, you've got bits and pieces hanging off, more bits and pieces hanging off lures, and that's a good thing in that improves your chances of sticking hooks in the barra, but it also increases the chances of those bits of hooks and whatever else you've got hanging there hooking on bits of obstruction. So as in Awonga, as with most dams, most barra dams, a lot of those fish we catch are in timber and generally on deep diving, suspending or slow floating hard bodies. So I think I've got a Rip Yamakatsu Rip Riser there, I'll hold that, and I've got a Lucky Craft Pointer there, and I'll hold that there. And those are my two favourite lures in the timber. And you might have noticed there on each of those lures, there's only one hook, and there's only one hook on the front of that lure. So what I do is I take the back hook off the lure. If I'm fishing recreationally and I'm not too phased, then I probably won't do it until I've been stitched up in the trees by one. But the majority of the barra you catch on hard body lures are normally on the front hook, similarly to your lipless crankbaits for the bass. So what I do is I take the back hook off. And the thinking behind that is that when that fish inhales the lure, he gets that treble in his mouth. You don't hook him on the outside of the face. He inhales the lure, you hook him in his mouth, and he can then run through those trees and go. And they 9 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10 times, they won't stitch you up. They'll go as far as they go, and you can bring them all the way back. It's only really when you've got that back hook on there and he's got that hook in the mouth, or he's got the back hook in his mouth and the front hook's hanging free on the outside of the face, that one of those hooks will run into a tree stump, bit of timber, or even bury in some weed. And then that's when you have issues where split rings fail, treble hooks fail because the one's stuck in. So what? Yeah, if I'm fishing a tournament, I'll do it fairly, methodically. I'll take that back hook off. And when I hook a fish, I'll generally land them. They don't seem to throw the lure as easy, but they definitely don't stitch you up in the trees as badly. Yeah,
it's a great tip, mate. And I know that this year we've got the Humminbird Bass Electric Australian Open at Lake Wyaralong, and Joey Urquhart and Charles West taught me that last year. They had their little vibration bait on. They had a single assist hook underneath, and that allowed them to fish that lure through unimaginable nasty clumps of shit. And that lure you could just drive it through, and it was amazing. Every bite you got, you basically hooked it. As the fish inhaled the lure, that hook would find its mark, and bang, away you go. So it's really interesting to see how the bass guys and the barra guys have evolved it to end up at the same point. You need to throw in this timber to get the fish, but you also need to be able to get either the lure or the lure and the fish out of there. So it's just everything's on steroids with barra anyway. It's always a lot more exciting.
We used to do an exact same, that comes from the largemouth bass fishing in South Africa, where we used to take, the old headings, all those, the older version rattling spots and things like that, and we would do exactly the same. We'd take both trebles off, we'd hang a single hook and face it backwards.
Yep.
And you could throw that thing in a tree and wind it through a tree, sometimes even better than a jig. And you'd show those fish something different. And because they're all inhalation feeders, they don't try and peck it. They inhale the whole. You had no issues hooking up.
Mate, you're a pro staffer for Fish-Tec Solutions as well. Have you got any secret baits that you can give us a sneak peek at now, or anything coming out which is really going to light your fire that you think, man, this season is going to be off the chops?
The Biovex swim baits, the new Biovex swim baits. Used in conjunction with the weight systems, the stick weight systems. I think you've actually, if I hold that up to the camera, you'll probably be able to see that. That's one got a weight on it, so it makes mucking around with your lures a lot easier. I'm a tinkerer. I'm always trying to get the best out of the lures. I like to put double split rings on. I like to do different things. Get Madness vibes. I got that same Madness vibe there. That Griffo won the Nationals on, pretty much the same color. And again, we bend them down a little bit so they can vibe better. And again, I just take the back hook off, and you can still use them really well in the timber. So I don't. There's no real kryptonite or whatever you want to call it coming out, but they're constantly getting like those Biovex swim baits. Unfortunately, we have to tell people how good they are. We can't keep it to ourselves too much, as Griff would probably testify. But yeah, and the diversity of it. What I like to see with a lot of those lures is, like the flathead guys, embracing that glide bait, swim bait market, and the trick with the Biovex is they're a slow sinker, and then you can adjust the weight system. So they're really good on that. It's not a fast sinking lure, and you can twitch it and pause it across the flats for the flatties, give them that little bit of chance just to make up their mind whether they're going to eat it or not. The Delta Ranger rods, they're all here now. The 777 is a really great swim bait rod. It's a good quality rod at a good price. There's a pretty good range there, right from the light tackle, the drop shot spin rod, all the way up to that 777 heavy impoundment bait caster. There's one rod there which is a Delta 723. It's like the rod. It's like that one rod that most guys look for, that they can chuck a backpack on and go for a walk or jump in a kayak and just take one rod and still catch bass, medium barra, bream, laddies. It's a pretty good versatile rod. It took a fair bit of work to get it right. So yeah, probably this year's more, I suppose, Corona 19 is a pretty good example. It's more of a consolidation year, and really the stuff that Fish-Tec have to make it better, and to educate a few of the guys out there that a lot of these lures are not just barra lures or not just bass lures. They've actually got a pretty good cross-reference across a multi-species.
Mate, that's awesome, and we're really glad how you embrace ABT's motto, who shares wins. You're a great pro staffer for both of those companies, mate, and we really appreciate you sharing the knowledge and even giving me a few tips at Awonga last year. They didn't work, I didn't catch anything, but we appreciate you sharing the knowledge, mate, and look forward to getting up to your part of the world, fingers crossed, late September and early October, because the bream fishing in Gladstone, I know you don't really do it much, but it is exceptionally good. It's all on top water, and it's matched with barra at the best time of the year. So let's hope that we're all unlocked by then, and everyone from Australia can come and enjoy what your area has to offer.
Yeah, Steve. Look, the winter bream fishery here is I'd have to go just get sort of really psycho, and even call it epic. Like we saw. I've taken my kids fishing in winter where we've gone fishing for grunner, and we catch a 4.5 kilo bag of bream as a bycatch, fishing for grunner, not even trying to target them. That's on large lures and large plastics, and you'll catch one bream of about 850 or 900 grams, the yellowfin, and there'll be 6 or 7 similar size just following up. So they are there. They're just very few guys that fish for them in the winter months. No different to the Gold Coast jumping pin. There is a spawning aggregation, a spawning run, and I have seen some amazingly large schools of fish, across the flats when I've been looking for other fish and caught a few on fly, just as to keep me going.
It's an awesome part of the world, mate, and thanks for joining us from there tonight. Cheers.
No worries, Steve. Good to catch you.
Yes, as soon as that landed, it was on.
Well, there you go. Rod Walmsley is in the centre of some awesome fishing up there, and some great tips for him there. That single hook on the Barra jerkbait one, absolutely gold. Thanks very much to all the comp winners. I've got you all already. There we go. Jack Allwoods is all packed up. We've got, who's this? We got Paul Langley's packed up there. Ruth Beebe's is packed up. Rod O'Sullivan and Anthony Calso, Pro Lure staffer, for his Show Us Your Boat segment. A couple more things to do tonight, and then we're out. First thing is to tear this bloody microphone off. Actually came off pretty easy, but quite a few hairs sticking on there. I think that's a male version of waxing. And what I've got to do is for a final thing. I did it last week. We played one of my highlights packages. This is the ABT Lockdown Live version of turning the lights on at the end of the nightclub and night, because I've got some highlights here from 2018 of my day at Lake Macquarie, catching a few big bream, big fast run into the finish. It's about 6 or 7 minutes. We hope you like it, and make sure you tell all your friends about ABT Lockdown Live. We'll see you next Friday night at 7 o'clock. So until then, here's the nightclub clearer with Wax Chest Morgan. See you next week. For me, Lake Macquarie was an event in the Costa Bream series that could have gone each way. I've done really well there in the past, and also pretty poorly. The one thing I was terrified of was a deep blade bite, but luckily the wind blew for the tournament and I caught most of my fish shallow. The first day was, well, for me, pretty slow, especially in the morning. I didn't really get my first bream bite until around 8:30 in the morning, and that fish fell off. I'd found a few crabfish on the practice day on some of the deeper boats. Now, for me, a deep boat is anywhere over 10 foot up to maybe 25 feet. So for me, this is about the deepest water fishing I was doing all year. And because the water was so clear in Lake Macquarie, I dropped right down to 2-pound fluorocarbon straight through. Now, that can buy you the bites, but it can also cost you. This felt like a really good fish, but it had got around the keel of a yacht, and the keel was pretty smooth, so I thought if I took it easy, back that drag off, then hopefully I'd be able to get the fish to swim back around and out of the way. And the 2-pound line actually takes a lot of punishment under not much pressure. Like, you need to pull the line tight to break it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So after only a couple of bites in the first few hours, I started to broaden my horizons and fish some shallower boats that had been good for me in the past. When the fish aren't in the spots you thought they were in the practice, that's all you can do. Keep on expanding. This cracker of a fish came off a boat in only around 3 feet of water. So with a 1.3 kilo fish in the box, number 2 didn't take too long to follow. Now this fish and my third fish were both small bag fillers under 30 centimetres. So as it happened, I ended up with half an hour to go. I made a dash to the Swansea Flats with one of Adam's favourite lures from fishing.com.au, and I bagged my 4th. Now, how many times have you been in a tournament, you've got 4 in the box, you've only got 10 minutes to go, and you think, I've only got a few casts to go to make something happen? Well, this day, the wind was blowing hard, there was surf on this bank. I said we had 3 casts to go, and on that 3rd cast, I pulled through the weed, and a 37 centimetre jumped on. And when you're praying for a fish, pulling through the weed, and then finally feeling that fish just shake its head and pull back, that is what tournament fishing's all about. Now, of course, there was one eye on the fish, but the other eye was on the clock, and every minute you're late in an ABT event, you lose 50 grams. But the equation here was pretty simple. Take your time, play it out, get the points, and cop a late penalty. And in the end of the day, that's exactly what we did. Big apologies to Simon Martin, mate. Sorry for the 50 grams late, but it was an exciting afternoon. I suppose one of the lessons here is don't be afraid of rough water. If you can stand up in it and you can fish in it, and especially if the water's clear, the fish are going to be there. It stirs up the bottom, gets them feeding, get into it. Alright, time for a rough and wet ride home.